Who are you? Please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. Steve Laura.
Okay.
I jotted this down. Too many Americans are out of work. We can't get this company moving forward without good paying jobs. I just want to respectively ask each of you, what's your jobs plan?
You know, as I said earlier on, I put forth a very specific jobs plan, which you can see at my website, randy2012.com, and I have an aide here today. We may have copies with us. And the plan has different facets. A lot of it is stimulating and helping small businesses. And so we talk about doing some tax cuts for businesses, for small businesses. We talk about helping startup companies, allowing them, and some of it's pretty technical, but allowing them to extend the use of net operating losses for a period of time. We talk about doubling the amount of money that a company has to earn before they're subject to certain regulations. The plan talks about things that we can do for the fishing and the agriculture industries, which are critical for the economy of Eastern Long Island. It talks about having folks in my office, in my congressional office, who are focused on bringing companies to the district. So one person in particular who would be effectively a salesman for the district, and he or she would work with existing companies here that want to grow, help facilitate that. And I know people in this audience have probably experienced firsthand the myriad of regulations, the time that it takes to navigate both the local, the state, and the federal government. So have a facilitator for that. At the same time, somebody who tries to lure other businesses here into the district. And one thing I pledge to do if I'm elected is to literally meet face-to-face with these potential new companies in our district and be a salesman for it. Because we are competing not only with foreign countries, but we're competing with other states in America for business. And some people are more aggressive than others. In my own business, we have a facility in Indianapolis. I got a call, and we're not a big company, I got a call from the governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, who I don't know Mitch Daniels, pitching me on why we should be creating more jobs in Indianapolis and talking about the tax incentives that they have there. I think we need a similar approach here in New York State and here in the district, and I'd be proud to do that. So the plan goes through different things, trying to leverage the great technology that we have at Brookhaven National Lab, the great graduates that we're turning out of our colleges and universities here in the district, trying to attract more venture capital investment. If we want a true technology companies here, create a startup mentality and culture, we need more VC money, and we get a very small portion. I think about 0.05% of VC money comes here. Considering everything that we can offer, that's a very small amount. We also need to lure entrepreneurs here and create a true startup culture, which is lacking right now. And there are some good groups that are working on that, and I would like to work hand in hand with them to do that.
Job creation has always been, as it relates to the federal government anyway, a partnership between the federal government and the private sector. And the federal government's obligation is to create an environment in which the private sector can flourish. So if you were to ask me what I think the three things that the public sector, that is to say the federal government, should emphasize, it is investment in infrastructure, investment in education, and investment in innovation. And we are particularly well poised here on Long Island to accommodate investment in all of those. We all know we have a crumbling infrastructure. I said before that unemployment in the heavy construction industry is approximately 30% here on Long Island, and there's an awful lot of good that those people can do, and if they are put back to work, we all know what will happen. They'll take their families out to dinner more often, they'll buy more clothing for their children, they'll have increased economic activity which will filter its way through the economy. Education. The largest employer, as I said, in the 1st Congressional District is University of New York at Stony Brook, and the second largest employer is Suffolk County Community College. So one of the things that I worry about is access to higher education. I've worried about it my entire adult life. When I see proposals that would eviscerate the federal role in the student financial aid process and recognize that a third of the students who go to Stony Brook get a Pell Grant and 40% of the students who go to Suffolk County Community College get a Pell Grant, and many of them will stay home if they don't have access to those monies, that's a very important issue for me and something that gives me great concern. I also recognize that we have some 3.5 million jobs vacant in this country right now, and they're vacant because we don't have applicants who have the skill set that they need. It's one of the reasons that the President has been pushing for job training efforts linked to our community colleges. And one of the reasons I've been supporting that is to provide that kind of training. And innovation, I mean, just look at Brookhaven Lab. Look at all of the businesses that it has spawned. Look at all of the businesses that investment in Stony Brook University has spawned. So we really have to work on those things, because my concern is that if the federal government continues on its austerity process, we're gonna have a jobs deficit to overcome, because we will be losing jobs, and so we're going to be putting double the pressure on the private sector to both grow a job base that we all recognize is inadequate, but having them their first effort be to replace the jobs we're losing as a result of the abandonment of federal investment. Look, the top 20 employers in the 1st Congressional District: 2 schools, 2 colleges, 10 school districts, 5 hospitals, 2 federal installations, and a social service agency that gets almost all of its reimbursements from Medicaid. What do they have in common? What they have in common is an incredible reliance on federal policy. So we have to be very careful as we go forward, as we talk about cutting spending. We have to be very, very careful that we do so in a way that protects what is basically the underpinnings of the economy of the 1st Congressional District. Now, I didn't create it, Randy didn't create it, none of you created it, but we have to meet reality where it is and do the best that we can to both preserve that and at the same time put in place the investments that we need to grow jobs, and that's more a private sector activity than it is a public sector activity.
I do not think it's a positive thing that the top 20 employers in our district are heavily dependent on the federal government. And those are 20 important institutions, and we should be supportive of them. But I think we need a healthy and thriving private sector, and I'd like to see that, get up in that group as well, because we don't want to put all of our eggs into one basket. And at the end of the day, the private sector pays for the public sector. So, my plan is geared towards, and I of course am supportive of the public institutions we have here. I'm not supportive of my party if they're going to be cutting funding to BNL or to the universities, but on the other hand, if we don't work in improving the private sector, the ball game's over. And we're seeing that with the persistent deficits we have and the overall debt we have, and we need to get our economy and we need to get our private sector on its feet. Now, I tried, in answer to that question, I got very tactical, because in business, I've been successful because I have been very tactical. And there's sort of 2 elements that a congressman can help out. One is on a very day-to-day basis, and that's what I tried to lay out in my 10 points job plan, things that I think are achievable in the short term and things that I can personally do. The second thing is policy, and I know Congressman Bishop talked a lot about that, and I agree with much of what he said, but I will tell you, as a business person, some of the things that are hurting us right now are, first of all, too much regulation. And when you look at something like the Affordable Care Act, where the government swoops in and imposes on business a new set of rules, that can be very frightening for businesses, makes a lot of them step back, stop their hiring, and are also concerned about what's coming next. What's going to be the next? Is it going to be cap and trade that's going to be passed next? What are the next policies that we have to deal with? And it's that atmosphere of uncertainty which is hurting businesses. And I also think right now we have a very adversarial relationship in the campaign, not our campaign per se, but certainly on the presidential level. I think President Obama has been scapegoating business and been pitting one versus the other. And we need to recognize that small businesses and big business are the engines of our economy. And to ostracize them and to criticize them isn't going to help anybody. It's just going to create an unnecessary wall in this country which we can't afford to have.
I don't take a position on whether the economy of the 1st Congressional, the underpinnings of the economy of the 1st Congressional District are good or bad, that the top 20 employers are public institutions or institutions that are heavily reliant on government funds. I simply say that's what it is. And I think we have an obligation to deal with reality, as I said, as we find it. I certainly am not going to pursue a set of policies that will be detrimental to or deleterious to the underpinnings of our economy. I'm just not going to do it. Now, with respect to the Affordable Care Act, I think it's important that we, again, have the same set of facts. For 95% of America's businesses, the Affordable Care Act has no implication whatsoever. 95% of America's businesses have fewer than 50 employees, and the Affordable Care Act makes no mandate on any business that has fewer than 50 employees, but what it does do is it says to those businesses that have fewer than 50 employees, if you wish to provide insurance to your workers, you have two things happening now that are good for those workers and for you. One is that in 2014 there will be small business exchanges, meaning that small businesses can enter these exchanges and have the same buying power as huge employers. That's very, very positive for small businesses that want to provide their employees with access to health care. The second is there are now tax credits that provide up to a 30% credit to small businesses that make the decision to provide health care to their workers. So again, this is very, very good for small businesses, and as I say, 95% of America's businesses have no mandate under the Affordable Care Act. The last thing I will say, regulation. Again, it is the boogeyman, and there is this sort of, and I'm not saying this is Randy saying this, I'm saying that is certainly what we encounter in Washington. But I'll just give you one statistic, just one. The Clean Water Act was passed in 1974. At the time that the Clean Water Act was passed, only 30% of America's waters, surface waters, were either swimmable or fishable. It's now 70%. I would suggest to you that that's a good thing. And I would suggest to you that particularly here, given our reliance on fishing, on travel, on tourism, on the second home industry, the kind of regulation that has brought back the quality of our nation's waters is something we ought to be applauding, not condemning.